Hey, everybody, this is Kevin with Leading Edge Financial Planning. And today, a little bit of an experiment here. I want to talk about a wealthy family called the Rockefellers. Okay. So I think there's some things we can learn from people that are wealthy. I know just because someone is wealthy doesn't mean they're good, but sometimes those are some of the best people to learn from. And so John D. Rockefeller, he was born in 1839. He died in 1937. He had two goals. His first goal was to live to 100, which he was very close. His second goal was to have $100,000, which at the time was very wealthy. So he did meet one out of the two goals. But I think some of the things that I found about the Rockefellers is just some of the intelligence that they had once they became wealthy. Okay. So, was he a good man? Was he a bad man? I'll let the history books tell you that. But he had $400 billion worth of today's wealth back during the early 1900s. So he bought all of the oil companies that had been going bankrupt during a market crash. And he owned three-quarters of the oil companies at some point, production of oil at some point in the United States. That's a lot of production. And they said he was monopolistic, and he probably was if he owned three-quarters of them. But anyway, he built a tremendous business, which is, that can be impressive. Somebody builds a tremendous business. I think what's more impressive, though, once you start to have some money, how do you have wealth preservation? And, the rich pilot, poor pilot family, what we see some pilot families get off to a fantastic start, generating a lot of wealth, not just having a high income, but generating wealth. What are some of the things that you can do to keep your wealth and grow your wealth? And if you wanted to go after generational wealth, there's even more goodness from the Rockefellers on how they did that. But anyway, let me get to just a few ideas. And I've already talked about this in another video, the difference between productive assets, assets that produce more cash flow or more wealth. You have speculative assets, which you buy at a price. You could sell them at a higher price. That can work. And then you have non-productive assets, which non-productive assets is something that doesn't produce any income. Greatest example of a non-productive asset would be a car that you keep in the driveway. And, the worst part of non-productive assets is when you have to feed these assets. You got to change the oil. You got to fix the cars up to keep them going. And if you have enough cars, if you had 1 million cars, for example, and you had to keep them all up, that would bankrupt you. So the Rockefellers, they did buy some non-productive assets. They absolutely did. They bought a number of homes. John D. Rockefeller is a pretty incredible guy, even if he was maybe a bad guy or a good guy. I don't know which. He was supposedly a Christian who gave away a lot of money, and he wanted his family to give away a lot of money. He started some educational things for our country. So anyway, but one of the things that J.D. Rockefeller did is he really believed in productive assets. So something that would produce a return. Cash flow was something that was mentioned in a number of the research pieces that I looked at. He liked cash flow. So that could either be like a dividend, it could be interest on a stock. He bought a lot of commercial buildings. He built a lot of Manhattan, and a lot of these commercial buildings produced income for he and his generations to come. So he did buy, like I said, non-productive assets. He probably bought some speculative assets, although there was not a tremendous amount I did not find a tremendous amount of that in my research. If someone knows that he did buy a lot of speculative assets, please let me know. But he really believed in a process of wealth. And not only did he believe in a process of wealth, he eventually and the family formed the first family office, which, a family office is basically you hire all your own accountants, you hire your wealth management people, your estate planners, attorneys. And part of that family office actually became a part of one of the JP Morgan or Chase groups, and eventually was spun off, to be a bank. So he basically created something that could continue to grow his wealth. So that's what I think we can learn from the Rockefellers, is that really continuing to grow your wealth is a good thing. The Vanderbilts, I'm not going to get too deeply into Cornelius Vanderbilt, but Cornelius Vanderbilt, he had $185 billion in today's dollars. And within 2 to 3 generations, all the money was gone. And with the Rockefellers, we're going on 6 generations now. Nobody knows how much the family has, but the family has one thing a number of things that are just fascinating to me. So they have a constitution. So how does the family constitution work? It kind of explains what the mission and the ideas about wealth that get passed along to new family members. So it's really like a financial plan on steroids. It says what they believe in. So I'm not saying you have to have a family constitution, but you do have to know what your philosophy is as a pilot family. Like, what kind of assets are we willing to buy? How much of non-productive assets versus assets that will have a return on investment are we willing to buy? If we're going to buy speculative assets, how much of that will we buy? I think it really does come down to percentages, because the Vanderbilts, as opposed to the Rockefellers, they were another really rich family. They bought a tremendous amount of real estate, but it was not productive real estate. There was no income coming in. They had multiple houses with multiple people that worked in the house as servants, employees, whatever you want to call them. And it was a huge amount of money that had to keep feeding that beast of having all of those other pieces of real estate that were not productive. Also, it was, as always, gambling, alcoholism, many other things that destroyed the Vanderbilts. But the Rockefellers really did all of this on purpose. Not only did they have a family constitution, but all members of the family had to go to a retreat and they had to learn the teachings of wealth. Now, one of the books about the Rockefellers talks about how they used whole life insurance. And I know some insurance people have decided, well, if you want to get wealthy, buy life insurance, whole life insurance. I think, again, they used whole life insurance in a really intelligent way, really smart way. Again, the Rockefellers have lasted 6 generations because they were really smart, and they continue to be smart. So if you want to borrow money from the family, you can, but they take insurance out on you as well. And so they're continuing to feed back the family trusts. They have at least 2 trusts. They probably have many more, but I know that they have a number of trusts. And so they continue to think about keeping it going, even if somebody doesn't work. Now, they're doing a lot of work. They're doing a lot of charity, by the way. So if you're saying, oh, I hate those rich people, they're doing a lot of charity as well. That's a big part of what J.D. Rockefeller believed in. He gave away a lot of money during his life, and he kept that going. So just the last few things. Eventually, the Rockefellers, they got out of oil. They were forced to get out of oil. So he made all his money in oil. But then he switched and said, I'm going to make it somewhere else. I'm going to be tax smart somewhere else. For the pilot families, you're making all your money from flying. What is your next stage of building wealth? Tax efficient, can be left to children and grandchildren if you want. Allow you to not have to trade time for money anymore. I think these are all of the ideas of the Rockefellers. And then the Vanderbilts, on the other hand, they decided that they were rich. And they got content. They just bought any house they wanted to buy. They bought racing boats. They bought other types of artwork, non-productive assets. They probably sold some of them for profits, but many of those, helped with the demise of the family. If you want to get into the estate part of the families, and there's lots of great articles about how the Rockefellers did really brilliant estate planning and the Vanderbilts not so much. What I wanted to focus here on is anytime you're going to buy an asset or take on a new liability, think about how it's going to affect your cash flow. If you're buying a second or third house, think about how that's going to affect your cash flow. Because again, Rockefeller method, a lot of it was about cash flow and about, making sure that you're doing things that are going to continue to advance the family wealth and not destroy it. So thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave me a thumbs up, a like. If you did not enjoy the video, just put something in the comments. What would you rather us focus on? Because this was a little bit of an experiment. Thanks so much. Y'all take care.
Leading Edge Financial Planning, LLC is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Leading Edge Financial Planning and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For additional information, please visit our website at www.leadingedgeplanning.com. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, and it should not be relied on as such. It should not be considered a solicitation to buy or an offer to sell a security. It does not take into account any investor's particular investment objectives, strategies, tax status, or investment horizon. You should consult your attorney or tax advisor. The views expressed in this commentary are subject to change based on market and other conditions. These documents may contain certain statements that may be deemed forward-looking statements. Please note that any such statements are not guarantees of any future performance, and actual results or developments may differ materially from those projected. Any projections, market outlooks, or estimates are based upon certain assumptions and should not be construed as indicative of actual events that will occur. All information has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but its accuracy is not guaranteed. There is no representation or warranty as to the current accuracy, reliability, or completeness of, nor liability for, decisions based on such information, and it should not be relied on as such.